I would love to see Wincobank as my mother saw it. She used to say it's the prettiest place, it was the prettiest place imaginable. And I met my husband out cycling. And out cycling we stopped at this cottage for a drink. And they had the biggest old-fashioned Bible with an iron clasp. And he said, "Where do you come from?" My husband said, "Conisbrough." "Oh," he says, "you've got Conisbrough Castle." He says, "Yes." He says to me, "Where do you come from?" I said, "Sheffield." "What part of Sheffield?" I said, "Wincobank." He said, "Wincobank high or low?" I said, "Well, on the post office it says High Wincobank." He says, "That's the prettiest little place God ever made." And he used to live there, yes. So it worked out what my mother said, and everybody used to say it was the prettiest little place God ever made, and I'd love to see it as she saw it. Because when she was born in 1897, there were only 2 houses on Jepson Road.
Yeah.
And to me, I've been in hospital several times. When you come home, it's not coming home to your own home, it's looking through your window. And from my front window, I could picture my granddad walking up, because this big old stone house on Shire Green Lane used to be the Working Men's Club, until they built the Flower Estate, and then they built Shire Green Club to cope with that. And I could picture them walking up and going there, and look through me when I can see where my auntie was born, my favourite cousin, but his Auntie Doris lived, and he was 2-year-old when his mother died. And the other side was where my granddad lived when he retired. And when you come back, as though streets know you. It's not an area, it's too personal. Like it's impossible to explain it.
And what about the chapel as well? Can you remember the first time you came in here?
Well, my grandma lived in the chapel house before she was married. Just beyond the chapel, a big sloping roof. My mother used to call that Brown Shop. And their daughter Phyllis was my mother's matron of honour when she got married. And there you are.
It's fascinating.
And there used to be Nellie Williams, and the other side used to be a fruit shop. Used to be a post office and fruit shop. And Mrs. Williams used to say that me and my brother were like twins. But we are very close. This is my youngest brother, because there's 9 years between me and my sister. So it's as though my mother had 2 families. She used to always say about me and my brother being like twins. And we've done Lambeth Walk at school. We were entertainers.
When you say when you're down Wincobank, when we started with the Reverend Harrington, get the kids out the trouble down the bottom of Wincobank at one time, the only thing I knew anything about, as I said before, was boxing. So we opened the place, we had nothing. We put one of the scrap men, I think it was Jimmy Childs, gave us a small RSJ, and we got it, we knocked some bricks out of the wall and put it in the corner, got a bag, so we had one bag and the old stage, and we made a temporary ring. We made a ring, like it was a death trap really, but it served the purpose. And the point, we used to run a dance to try and get money to buy some equipment. Well, the dances were packed out, and it was that period of the 50s of rock and roll. And you'd be rocking and rolling and singing and one thing, and they collect the money, going around, we start going around pubs, clubs, schools, colleges, doing exhibitions and talks about boxing and what we were hoping to achieve. And people says, bloody nutcase you. But that was the way the talk was, because you see, it's impossible what's going on. But I said, if you keep trying, you'll get there. And gradually, I mean, the first Sheffielder, because I'd come across a fella called Johnny Cuthbert. When my brothers in Dublin, when they boxed pro and come over to England to box in the early 40s, well, between the war and after the war, and they talking about these, Johnny Cuthbert, who was British featherweight and lightweight champion. In my time, when I come over here in the 50s, I met all these fellas. Randolph Turpin, world middleweight champion. You know, Ernie Roderick and Bruce Woodcock and his brother and all these fellas. Then, when the summer had come and the horse racing season started, with all the Irish here, and then all the ones used to come over for the racing. But you know, at Doncaster Racecourse was absolutely, used to be packed out. You know, yeah. Then the dog track, all the Irish were coming over here with the greyhounds racing. So just had your head screwed up. Everybody was supposed to be at one another. Yet they're playing football together. Sport and music brings everybody together. Like in the chapels, the churches around. I used to love listening to them singing, "Onward, Christian soldiers." You don't want to be singing that. That's a Protestant song. I says, I like it, you know. And you listen to them. You go into these churches and they'd be singing songs. And you think to yourself, that sounds fantastic, you know. Then you go into the cathedral in Sheffield. I say, I've seen you coming out of the Protestant cathedral. Yeah, but I says, I was in the Catholic cathedral first. I went in there and sang a few songs in there. But I says, I like the Protestant songs. And everybody start getting on to, it's all about living together, getting on with one another, telling stories like what we're doing today. Because people now and again bleed nutcase you. That's what they used to say.
We've lost.
Yeah, they used to more talk.
The nicest way to learn local history was round the fire and listen to your parents talking.
Yeah.
Now they just sit there with
television on.
Games they play, all that's going. And when they talk about Yorkshire, if you try to read the proper Yorkshire, you can't read it. And my husband's brother married a Barnsley girl. Now, he spoke as well as my husband. He never heard my husband swear. He wouldn't allow that. And going to Barnsley to see his brother once, his wife opened the window and shouts, "Wait a band." Where you going? It's the most incredible county. And we had friends who were in army with my husband that used to come. And one of them, he lived in Surrey, and he became area manager for Tesco in Bakewell. And why he altered the name of this cottage, I don't know, because it was called Stir Pudding Cottage. And he altered it, he had a steel roof and called it Steelcroft. To me, Stir Pudding Cottage were a lot better. And his wife couldn't stand Derbyshire. Now that I can't believe. And he once said to me, "I think you're just biased in front of about Yorkshire." I said, "Well, it's God's own county, isn't it? So you've got to be." And I just wish you were living today. I've been there quite a bit, Russell, because it was something on television that's recent, and they've called it God's own county. And he used to say, "No, you're just biased about it." And I went to old Wincobankers.
Yeah.
And this is the Methodist minister from Fairsley Avenue.
Yeah.
I said, "It's been a big thing that for me to come there." He says, "Why is that?" I said, "Because the last time I was in it was my husband's funeral." I said, and I could just see coffin.
Yeah.
I says, so, but go to old Wincobankers. I says, took it away. I says, and Martin Olive, who used to take our history group, used to say, I think your religion, Connie, is like your politics. You're undenominational. I says, and that's how it should be. And he says, I agree with them.
Yeah. There was
the old Wincobankers, they were wanting to name of this new community centre.
Yeah.
Well, there used to be an old pub in Wincobank called White Swan.
Yeah, yeah.
They knocked it down and built this tower block.
Yeah.
And I think it's lovely that they called it the Signet.
Yeah.
So they were saying, what would you call the new community centre? And I could only think of Hippodrome in town.
Yeah, yeah.
So I said, well, why not call it the Happy Drome? He said, I like that. But then I thought about it and thought, no. Wincobank Picture Palace, they've had loads of fun in there as a kid.
Oh, that was a great place, yeah.
I mean, it used to be called Picture Lane in them days.
I know.
A little wooden hut where you could go and buy your sweets.
Yeah.
And go in, and I mean, if Paul White were tight at railway lines, you had to go week after to see if you'd been rescued, didn't you?
I know, yeah.
So why can't we keep the palace going?
Yeah.
Like they've kept the White Pub going, calling it the Signet.
Yeah.
It's just, we've had some wonderful times.
And there was the characters around the place. There was a fellow in Brightside called Anzio Joe Roberts. He went right through the Second World War. And I'm working with, for Hassels when we're building down in Wincobank, and I become friends with him. And he talking me right through the Second World War and what he, you know, he went from there to there to there to there, listening to the stories, and then going around and listening to the stories, other people that come back after the Second World War. And you're thinking to yourself, they wanted medals as big as buckets made out of solid gold, how they survived it. And what they, you know, some days they went 2 and 3 and 4 days without eating. And you're thinking to yourself, but all the different places you're travelling from Wincobank, you know, with the boxing, the characters you're coming across and going back, like going over to Doncaster, and you're looking and you're thinking to yourself, you know, reading about these people and then meeting them. And like when they'd have the parades and all the soldiers with the medals on and everything else, you used to look at them and you used to think to yourself, marvellous. And then talking to them after. And the whole ceremonies of what was going off around the place. But like the churches, there were so many churches around here. There was old Methodists and...
Well, my husband used to say, when you're in army and they say, where do you come from? Yeah. They say, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. But a Yorkshireman says Yorkshire.